Szanowni Państwo, witam na ostatniej sesji podczas GBS Talks 4.0. Let me switch to English because we are now reaching the final part of our event today. We have for you a special guest, an international coach and a great speaker, the person who I personally met a few years ago during one of the events in Bulgaria. And this person is Peter Ivanov, international coach and person who is actually teaching and sharing his best know-how about how to power virtual teams. In fact, he is an author of two great books. The one was just recently released, and the previous one I have with myself, actually with a personal dedication. Peter, thank you very much for that book. I must say it's very inspiring, but now let's switch to you. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Victor. It's an honor, and good evening, everyone. My presentation starts with 5 words, which 50 years ago have casted the world in fear and hope, which are still a symbol of the unexpected that calls for urgent action, which for free men and their families meant 1 week struggle for life or death. These 5 words are, Houston, we have a problem. Imagine the year is 1970, by the way, the year when I was born. Precisely it is 11th of April and the clock in Houston shows 13:13. Precisely in this moment in time, the American Space Agency NASA shoots the spaceship Apollo 13 to the moon. The experts plan to land on the moon in 4 days. On the 3rd day, April the 13th, there is a loud crash and the 3 astronauts see how white powder flows into the space. This is their oxygen. 2 from their 3 oxygen tanks have just exploded and their entire oxygen flows into the space. The Houston Control Center is in panic. No one has ever planned with such a disaster. The families of the 3 astronauts are completely horrified. How many of you have seen the film Apollo 13? I know we are online, but just raise your hand if you have seen it. If this here is the Earth, and this here is the Moon, on the April 13, on the 3rd day they are here, where is the cross, very close to the Moon. If they continue flying according to the plan, they have energy somewhere between the middle between the Earth and the Moon, where the line stops, but not enough to reach the gravity of the Earth and so to be pulled at the Earth's surface. It is clear now the mission landing on the Moon has failed. All already planned geological or other lunar research have been blown away by this explosion. Now, the life of the astronauts is at stake. Now, it is a matter of life or death. In the Houston Control Center, there is one man in charge, the 37-year-old Jim Kratz. He, with his flat and short haircut, he looks you always into the eyes and acts tough but competent. Jim grasps immediately that in order to save the lives of the astronauts, he has to win one fight, the fight for energy. Energy in the space is everything. You need energy in order to move the spaceship, in order to navigate it, but also to communicate with the Earth. Now, every energy unit, every single amp has a life meaning. Now, they need a miracle. What does Jim Kratz do in this historical moment? He gathers his entire Houston team in one room. The room boils from anxiety and nervousness. The heads are challenged, the ideas rush around, the hearts are full with care, fear, and hope. Jim listens each and every one very carefully. At one point, he calls for silence. Then he pulls all these people spread around the space together. Everyone, the 3 astronauts in the space, the Houston Control Center, scientists, engineers, hundreds of people. Jim says, we haven't lost a man in space until now, and as long as I'm responsible, no one stays there. Failure is not an option. He succeeds to pull all these people through a magical gravity force in one strong virtual team. One team aligned towards one goal, to save the lives of the astronauts. These are 7 days filled with incredible character strengths, genius feats of engineering, but above all, an extraterrestrial triumph of leadership. On the 17th of April, the land capsule Apollo 13 lands, or rather splashes into the Pacific, and the 3 astronauts are rescued. This is a miracle. This is virtual power. This is a virtual power team. Now, why I'm telling you this story? how many of you have worked on a project where you have unexpected change in the middle? Just say yes or raise your hand in front of your screen. You are in the outsourcing industry, most of you. So how often is the goal live day brought forward or the budget reduced and you still have to deliver, but with less energy? Or how often the team members spread in several locations have reduced motivation, and that deteriorates the team performance. I personally heard the statement of Houston, we have a problem more than once in my career. It was never a life and death situation, but for the project was quite critical. And now coronavirus forced us to work remotely, working from home, lockdowns and so on, and we responded well. But the longer the period extends, the more we need to make decisions remotely. We need to set now annual goals remotely. We need to maintain the communication structure remotely and maintain and even raise the team spirit. And for this, we need a system. And this is the system Virtual Power Teams, which I developed before Corona and now tuned for the new reality and the new normal, and I will share with you. Now, what makes me passionate about this is that it works. For example, we delivered 2 years project for global shared services, so it's outsourcing in a sense, involving 20 countries in Europe, delivered 3 months early and saved 250,000 euro, and I will share a bit later. Or another 1 billion global project involving Alibaba and e-commerce. It was a profitability impact 80 million euro. It's not just because of Virtual Power Teams, but to have the team and to complete on time or before time, these principles were essential. So I was IT manager for 20 years, running big teams. Last job, head of IT services for Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I had the chance to lead big teams, 100 plus, in various continents, in different time zones, and from various different cultures. And the last 7 years, I left the safe corporate environment and follow my dream to become a motivational speaker and to speak on events like this great event today. And I work with 100 plus clients again, many of them big multinationals with their global teams, but also some mid-sized companies which now expand, and we built Virtual Power Teams not just for their internal teams, but also involving their strategic marketing partners overseas. And also some NGOs where you have no boss, no salary, but the same principles apply. From all these experiences, I can tell that the virtual team is like the atom, where you have a nucleus, and then you have various particles flying around. In a virtual team, we aim to retain the gravity despite the distance. The gravity between the individual team members, which are the particles in this model, towards the nucleus. But the nucleus is not the manager or the project manager. This is the team purpose and goal. And you will see, we will set a lot of emphasis to set the goal bottom up as a team, not the boss decides and delegates, bottom up. So I'll give you principles about it. Now, what do you think are the top 4 reasons for global virtual teams to fail or international teams to fail? Yeah, ideally, at this point in time, I'd like to share a whiteboard so you could put your input or share it on the chat. We have now limited, but please use the chat, which I will not see your response. What are the top reasons for global or for international teams to fail? What do you think? And not to lose time, you can still type it. It will be shared among the participants. The number 1 reason based on the research is they failed to build trust. So I'll give you formats and tools to build trust despite the distance. The number 2 is they struggle to overcome communication barriers, being, time zones, being different cultures, being just not communicating openly enough, using too much email. Number 3 is the individual goals are not aligned to the team goal. There is a team goal, but individuals have hidden agenda and some other goals that facilitate their maybe career, bonus scheme, and so on. And number 4, the team goal is not clear and the team vision. Now, my presentation and the 10 big rocks, they are, by the way, the virtual power teams comprises of the 10 big rocks. These are the 10 success factors to retain the gravity and unleash the team power. And they are broken down in 3 groups. If you imagine your virtual team as a human being, the first part is the head. This is the logical, the cognitive part. And here comes the first big rock, namely personality and focus. And the manager say, I don't see the people. Why should I bother? What are they as individuals? From my perspective, big mistake. So I'll give you a concise formats like the life journey or the 5 magic questions when people get a report and they go deep and they connect heart to heart. The second one is strength matrix. In a poorly led teams, people feel anonymous, just like a resource. Here we will discover their natural strengths and talents. And when we put it in a matrix and everybody see what bouquet of skills we have in a team, a new feeling emerges that with this bouquet of skills, with this mix, we could achieve any goal that we set to ourselves. And number 3 is interdependent goals. So we will set the goal in such a way that everyone on the leadership team will have his or her own strategic goal. So here we are aiming in this part for clarity. Who is a member of the team and what is the goal of the team? The second part, that was the head. Second is like the body and muscles. This is the dynamic part. And here are the next 3 big rocks, namely forums and agenda, what meetings you need in order to keep the communication flowing. Knowledge management, and we linked it to the strengths and define knowledge champions, and regular feedback, sometimes scarce in local teams and even more in virtuals. And here we are aiming for a structured communication, not a manager-centric or problem-centric, which happens sometimes in poor-led teams. The manager calls a meeting if there is a problem, starts some finger-pointing, or he dominates the discussion, speaks most of the time. No, we structure it in such a way so everyone can contribute and shine. Everyone is having equal share of talking. And the third part, my favorite, is the heart. So here we'll be talking about recognition. By the way, do you know what is the number 1 reason for people leaving companies? This is the lack of recognition by their direct superior. So they leave bosses, not companies. And here we can share things how to recognize despite the distance. Working with the outsourcing industry, in Bulgaria, where I'm coming from, but I live in Hamburg, Germany, I work with many outsourcing companies and we develop a big pool of recognition and ways to praise and recognize progress. Then number 8, diversity. If you have a multicultural team, how to build the optimum team culture, regardless of the bouquet of cultures, and then how to maintain the winning spirit despite the distance. And here we are aiming to build the optimal team culture. And the number 10 I keep a little bit as a surprise for the end. Now, as Victor mentioned, my first book, I'm a mathematician, numbers guy, wrote a book a bit pressurized to protect my intellectual property. It's been translated in 6 languages so far, including Polish on the down left, even Chinese, upper right, and Spanish, Bulgarian, German, and English. And it was Amazon top 3 in the category International Management, just for 1 week, but I keep this screenshot dear to my heart. Now, the new book just went out, Power Teams Beyond Borders, and here we really go beyond borders. So we don't just build teams like in the first one within the corporate environment, but here we are building even global communities, teams where the team members do not belong necessarily to the same organization, like with your strategic partners. We use the new methods like hackathons and so on to really build global communities. And it is not just for business results, it's for really resolving the toughest challenges of humanity. So it is a business book, but it looks beyond business. Now, I have a question to you. We don't have the chat, but let me ask you, how much do you think are the virtual teams in percentage globally? And when I say virtual, more than 1 location. If you have even 2 offices in the same city, your team is virtual. If you have a home office workers on a regular basis, like Corona scenario, your team is virtual. So what do you think? What is the percentage? All companies, all businesses. So according to Forrester Research, and this study is 4 years old, they are 81%. And now with Corona, it's much higher. Let's see how the new normal looks like. And even before Corona, 81% are virtual, and 60% of them are in different time zones, so quite dispersed geographical teams. Now, we saw the 4 reasons for teams to fail. Let's see what the best performing teams have in common. And Google run their project Aristotle. They were looking for the characteristics that their best teams have in common. And they have a lot of data, and they started to research what is common between their high-performing teams. At some point, they discovered that most of the teams, they have an equal share of talking. So which means when they have a meeting, the extroverts shut up at some point in time, the introverts would speak up, and they kind of end up with equal share of talking. But then they realized there were some exceptions, and they continued to research. And do you know what is the number 1 characteristic that all teams without exception have? They called it, put a new term for it, psychological safety, which means their team members feel safe enough to take risks. They're not afraid that if they fail, they will be laughed at, or they will have a negative effect on their career. They take risks, and they show vulnerability. Don't show just the perfect side, as we sometimes show on social media. They show also some vulnerability, their weaknesses. They ask for help, they offer help, so they demonstrate this psychological safety without any exception, all the teams. Now, it will be good to reflect, how can you tell if your team have a psychological safety? I would leave this to you a bit as a homework. Now, how do you feel in your virtual team right now? Just take a moment to reflect. What's the first feeling that comes to heart or to mind? If I think of my first virtual team back in 2000, my feelings was dominated by frustration. By that time, we had a once a year a face-to-face meeting. Our boss was in London and we were spread around Europe, project managers. And once a quarter, we had a phone conference. And on these meetings, mainly our boss has spoken. He presented various KPIs and business results. Seldomly we were invited to present, and if so, that was without a clear goal ownership. It was rather sporadic, and it was not recognized by our manager. So after such meeting, we rarely spoke to each other, and even less helped each other. The only help came from some altruists, and that was not recognized by our boss. So briefly said, it was frustration and pain for us as well as for our manager. And from this experience, I know that poorly led virtual teams, they lose gravity over time. Their team members get lost in space, like the atom, they would get lost in space, and that deteriorates the team performance. So I asked myself the question, what can you do in order to improve the gravity and improve performance even exponentially after a specific point in time? And those teams that manage to do that, I call virtual power teams. And let's have a look now in the 10 big rocks that one after the other improve the gravity and improve performance. Now, I'm a father of 5 girls. No joke, 1 wife, 1 marriage, 5 girls. Apparently, this is the only thing I can. And we're still in a very kind of hectic face-to-face period. They're like 16, 14, 12, 10, and 8 years old. And but one day we will become a virtual family. And I think my next book project will be to crack the code of the virtual power of family. And even if you don't have kids, with your relatives, with your friends, how can you retain the gravity? So every time I was invited to lead a new team, I invited my direct reports, so-called leadership teams, for a 2-day workshop. And I invite them to present themselves with a life journey or lifeline. These are the moments of excellence, the moment they are most proud of, the highlights, but also the moments where it was most difficult, and nevertheless they managed to overcome. And if we want the people to present from this perspective, I was sure you will be amazed. Just within 5 to 10 minutes per person, you will find out what makes the heart of each and everyone sing. And not just you, because as a smart manager you may ask personal questions, but everyone will find out about everyone else. And in this way you plant the seeds of interpersonal relationships, and you will see how with a structured communication we will maintain those. So I also invite them to put a picture that they either find funny or identified with. This here is Oscar, lives in Madrid and weighs 9 kilos, a real monster. So by the way they pick the picture and they present it, within 30 seconds, they open a window to their soul. So people can connect. Even now working with some digital scale-ups they could never meet. They're programmers and big data experts spread around the world. Just by doing this introduction, you start building the gravity and heart-to-heart connection. And now this is an extra tip. If you don't have the time to dedicate 5 to 10 minutes per person, because it may take 1-2 hours, this is the flash intro. Siblings, if you have brothers or sisters, hobby as a child, what are you most proud of, and what else should others know about you, something exotic. 4 simple questions. Please try it out. I mean, if we had a chance now, if it was a longer session, we would go in the breakout rooms and you would interview each other. You will see how much bonding you create within 2 minutes per person, 5 minutes all together. And first 2 questions, very simple, but the second 2 require to show vulnerability. And this is exactly what Google discovered. That's what you start building a rapport, and you build trust, a key success for your team. So trust, from my perspective, is a function of 2 things. Personality, how well and how deep your team members know each other, and professional competence, how good are they in their field. So if you as a manager provide time and space for these 2 aspects to unfold, you build trust. And this is the fundament for your success as a team. The second one, the presentation has some questions for self-reflection and self-coaching. So I'm happy to share with you. Now, strength matrix. I'm a big fan of strengths-orientated management, which means strengthening the strengths instead of developing the weaknesses. And there is a Gallup Strengths Finder 2.0. How many of you know the Strengths Finder? So it's a very systematic approach. Here, I do it pragmatically. So I ask the people to list their top strengths. And for those of them who come with a list of 100 strengths, I explain that this is not a strengths competition, but we will use it for additional roles and responsibilities. And for those of them who struggle to list any strengths, there are 5, again, magic questions. What is easy and fun to do in your job? What was your biggest success? What are people asking you for help? And if I ask your best friend, what are your strengths, what would he or she say? So based on this question, people are put in breakout rooms, in pairs, and then one is the coach asking those questions, and he say, from everything I've heard, tell me, what is your biggest strength? And people come up with something natural, and then the coach is allowed to say, from everything I heard, I think your biggest strength is this. So in the end, everyone ends up with 2 strengths, internal perspective and then the external perspective. And when we put it in a strength matrix, a new feeling emerges. We even put avatars and gamify it, but a new feeling emerges. With this bouquet of strengths, with this mix of talents, we could achieve anything. Now, just to demonstrate the power of this personality and focus and strengths, I have a client in New York who runs MOOCs. Let me see, is everything well with the connection? Okay, very good. So this person runs MOOCs. How many of you know what is MOOC? It stands for Massive Open Online Course. And he's gathering 35,000 students online, and over the course of the 6 weeks, he's teaching them modern architecture. But not to be dry, they build the resilient schools for the Philippines. When the tsunami destroyed the infrastructure in the Philippines, the government decided to build the schools so robust, so they will be school in the normal times, but they will provide shelter in case of disaster. And he was giving this his input, and they were designing the school. But when the week 5 came, the critical 5 week came, people start dropping out, just learn enough for free. Why for free? Because he was collecting the money in the end when they successfully complete the project and get a certificate. He tries to collect the money up front, but only 2,000 people subscribed. So we had a coaching with his team of professors, and we decided to break down them in a groups of 5. Not us, it's a mammoth task, self-organizing, get together in a group of 5, regardless, based on proximity, time zone, and so on. And in this group of 5, they presented themselves with a lifeline and a picture. And they discovered their strengths, and they were not doing 5 individual projects, but just one project. Based on their strengths, they split the work. And when the critical week 5 came, they just couldn't let their teammates down. So they just stayed, and from 35,000, 27,000 people stayed until the end, which reflected, like nearly 500,000 revenue improvement. Simple step, just make people connect heart to heart, build a lot of gravity, flows into the results. Now, interdependent goals. Each team has a vision, usually the corporate vision, cascaded, and you as a manager has the choice, either in a Martin Luther King style, I have a dream, to present the vision so vividly so everyone can follow you, or to let the team members work it out. And for this, there is an exercise for 5 perspective. Within 2 hours, you could build a strong vision where everyone can identify his contribution. And when the vision is set, it's time to break it down in annual strategic goals. And here I make a key distinction between local and virtual teams. How many of you have worked on a project where you give everything, but some other team members are not so motivated? Yes, some of you. So in a virtual team, for this to happen is much more likely. It's sufficient that I don't pick up my phone every time I can, or I delay responding some emails, and here I am frustrating the other team members. So to avoid this scenario to happen, I would break the goal in so many annual goals. So each on the leadership team, if you are a manager and your direct reports, each one will have his or her own goal. And we do it in a 3-step process described in the book in the detail. We discover the 3 hottest topics. Regardless how smart are you as a manager, you have many locations and culture you don't know. So bottom up with a silhouette exercise and issues and opportunities and symbol of success, we would distill the 3 hottest topics. Then we will convert these topics into the SMART goals, probably know SMART, specific, measurable, and so on, but with much more detail. We make it much more tangible to people really to feel into it. And then we will convert the 3 SMART goals into strategic roadmaps, how we could achieve those. And then people will voluntarily pick, based on their strengths, their annual goals. So you ensure in one exercise, you ensure 2 things. You have a team goal set up by the team, and you have people picking their goals. So individual goals are aligned to the team goal. And if you do it like this, they're interdependent, they're connected and interdependent like the tooth wheels. But the more interdependent they are, the better, because that fosters the gravity of the team. If you do this, you have 3 effects. First is empowerment. In virtual teams, micromanagement is not an option. You cannot control them, and it's counterproductive. So set the goal as a team, let people choose, and then set them free. Once they have a goal, let them decide on the how. They have a full decision-making freedom within some budgetary and time constraints. So empowerment, then performance. In each team, you have like 3 groups of people. Up there are the high performance, like 5-10%, very ambitious, pushing for the best. 70% in the middle are the good citizens. Without them, you cannot deliver. And 10-15% at the bottom are the lower performers, not necessarily to fire, but they would sometimes hide behind a virtual corner. So now that they're exposed and they're interdependent, you have some healthy peer pressure, which raises the overall performance of the team. And all this dynamic and interaction fosters the gravity and improves performance. Now let's have a look in the second part, the structured communication. Now, forums and agenda. Once we finish this 2 days workshop, when we will go through the 10 big rocks, I ask the people, how often do we meet? How often do we have our team call? And often I heard once a month is enough, isn't it? Particularly when I was senior manager and they have their own teams and their own dynamics and stakeholders. They say, okay, once a month. And I said, let's start once a week. And if this is too much, we will adjust it. And initially I was getting like 60-70% of the participants. But towards the end of the first month, we were getting to 90-100%. And we remained there. What is the secret? How many of you have taken part in a phone conference? And how many of you felt bored at a phone conference? So the secret is not what you see or what you hear. This is what you do. Even if it's like a webcam and you can still see, I would encourage you every time to have slides and visual, because on one hand you hear it with your ears, but then you see. But even that it doesn't know. It is what you do. So I would break down the agenda in such a way so everyone will have his or her slot to contribute and to shine. And we would start with 2 minutes personal update. So what was your highlight since we last met? When I say weekly, it's not a silver bullet. You could decide even on a daily or like bi-weekly, depending on the intensity of your collaboration. But people would present what was their highlight since we last met. And here you hear like my new record, new personal best in marathon for the more sporty ones, to, for example, how it tastes red wine from Chile, Reserve 96. So it's very specific. It's like the spice, 2 minutes, not more. And then they go in a structured way. What have I achieved? But just milestone, every detail as a priority. Don't waste time together to go into the detail. What have I achieved? What stays in my way? So people show vulnerability here and ask for help. And who can help me out? So you flag the opportunities for collaboration, and after the meeting, people get together and resolve it. So in somehow we kind of by design have this equal share that Google discovered and showing vulnerability. Once a month, format is different. So again, this is not a new meeting, it's just a different format. If that was informal on the left and people could just dial in, because in a big global team, you have, if it's global, you do it lunchtime Europe, Australians are on mute. If they're on mute, you hear beer bottles, dogs and kids and everything. Same time, Brazilians, freshly showered, still in bed, don't want to show up. So allow for some people just to dial in and contribute. But once a month, we do it formal. So the leadership team takes part by video. We could see each other. And we invite here their direct reports, so the next organizational layer, so-called extended leadership team. And in order they not to be bored to death, they could ask questions while we speak. And in the end, last 15 minutes, we have a Q&A. We categorize the question and they are answered. And here, the leadership team, remember, everyone is having a goal from the interdependent goal. So here, everyone with one pager as a priority presents where am I with our strategic goal. The milestones achieved, budget, and so on. And then you see the extended leadership team, they see where we are with our strategic agenda. So with this mix of personal and professional on the left side, and then formal and informal, and a strict time management, that's the third component. On the left side, you have, do you know what's the optimal team size? There is a research. They call it 2 pizza team. So if you work late and order 2 big pizza, that would be sufficient, which is like 7 plus minus 2, 5 to 9 people. You need at least 5 because you need a diversity combination and that you can transform it in performance. But with each new team member, the complexity grows. So between 5 and 9 is the optimal. So if you have a 2 pizza team, on the left, 1.5 hours is enough, including the 2 minutes personal date each. On the right, you may have up to 100 people, including the extended 2 hours without any personal updates. Always finish on time. So here we would usually reflect, what works for you, because I'm sure you have a good structured communication, and what can you adopt from the tips that I given. And there are further tips. If you have a bigger organization, have to have an all-hands meeting and so on. If you're interested, raise questions, please, later on. And if you put people in the breakout rooms online, which I would encourage you not to be like, now I'm talking 45 minutes, try to break it down with some co-work. They call it, Harvard calls it the 5-minute rule. Give them input 5 minutes and then give them a task and a challenge. So if you put them in online rooms, now in Corona scenario, let them define on 3 roles. Who will present back? Because you need a digital input from their meeting. Who will take notes digitally so they could have a visual to show? And then who will be the gatekeeper to manage the time, but also to call everybody to speak up if somebody hasn't spoken yet. Looking at the time, I would skip this one, the 4 levels of virtual collaboration. Please feel free to ask me. You have, update meetings where it's more for update and for team building, but then you have a brainstorming where you should set a clear expectation, what people are expected to contribute. Then you have a decision, and don't shy from technology. You could even write a blog and ask people 48 hours before you take a decision. Give them your opinion as a manager. List the options, list some pros and cons, but don't show what is your inclination, and ask them for feedback. So you could use for global teams the technology in a smart way to engage people, not to decide top down, but to engage, to make the decision, to co-create the decision. And this will ensure engagement and commitment. And the highest level of collaboration is product development. There are certain tricks there. Now, home office tips. I was in Bali last year speaking on an event for running remote. There were companies with 100 plus people, which, not 100 plus, 1,000 plus people without an office, fully remote company. And they asked these managers and leaders and founders of these companies, what is the number one skill to lead remote workers? What helps you most? And you know what was it? There was this Slido, and the topics that they were shared, the one that were shared by most people, go bigger. That was over communicate. So if you give a task remotely, you don't see what's the response. If they see puzzled or they understand, tell them why you do what you do. Give them a bigger picture. Tell them the goal that you want to achieve with this task, and then the task. And then they will, in this way, you will empower them to make some decision and to navigate. Otherwise, they will start calling you back, or ask their peers, and it will be unproductive. So give them the big picture, the big why. And also, it is your responsibility to make sure they understood. You know the scenario when you give a task and when you see the outcome, say, no, this is not what I asked for. So make sure, ask questions, let them rephrase, make sure they understand what you mean. So over-communicate now becomes, in a positive way, key skill for Corona. If there is one secret that I have, leading family with 6 women, a wife and 5 girls, this is praise, praise, praise. What to praise? If there is a result and outcomes, praise the result. If there is no result yet, but you see supportive behavior, they help each other, praise the behavior. If there is neither a result nor a behavior, look harder. There is always something to praise. And this applies big time to virtual teams. And there are several tips, again, which I would skip now, but happy to answer in the questions. The new normal now, working with various IT companies and banks. How many people go back to the office? Currently, on average, 5 to 30 for the IT companies, and banks 30 to 50%. How it will be defined by industry is not clear yet. But the big question is what to do in the office. If certain people go to the office, what to do? Checking email or do phone calls? Probably not the best investment. The time in the office would be to co-create and to celebrate. And when I say co-create, decision-making, use the tools like Block for asynchronous collecting of ideas and get together in order to make the decision. Don't do it as a boss, top down. Or goal setting, now it's coming. You could prepare it online big time and then maybe use it if you have people in the office. Or strategy and product development. There are also some tips. Get every 6 months and 6 weeks in advance, do a beautiful design of the meeting. What will be the individual contribution of the participants? What will be the smaller group? What will be the whole group? So there is a know-how there. Make sure you use the time in the office for these co-creating activities and also to have fun and celebrate. The rest you could do from home or online. Now let's have a look in the culture. I had a client, global FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods companies, and they had a 1 billion euro project. So Chinese customers were buying their goods in 6 countries, Australia, Germany, UK, and so on, and putting them on Alibaba. And the vice president of business development asked the general managers of these countries to get together, accumulate the volume so the Chinese GM can make a deal with Alibaba. But nothing happened. 1 year passed, nothing happened. He said, okay, let's form a project and have a strong project team vision and culture. And what we did, we had a 1-day workshop in Amsterdam. They are highly paid, so their time is very precious. And we broke down the culture in 3 scales. Leadership, which is egalitarian versus hierarchical. Hierarchical, you wait for permission. There is a big distance between manager and employee. Egalitarian, there is almost no distance. You're expected to be proactive. And these are the countries. So there is a research. China, for example, is very hierarchical, whereas the Scandinavian are more egalitarian. Germany is in the middle. So I asked them to put on the scale a star, what is their optimal position. And for their aha moment, they said, until we reach project mandate, we will be more egalitarian. We will involve the Chinese and shape it together. Once we reach a project mandate, we'll be more hierarchical. Now, this is the brief, go on and deliver. And then they reflected, so far is good, give a lot of insight and good debate, but then they reflected, what can I do in order to support this culture? For example, Chinese have to be much more proactive, and what our leader can do in order to enable it. Second scale was decision-making, top-down versus consensual, and they were more on the consensual side. You know, like in America, if you are not quick decision-maker, you may be perceived as a weak leader. Whereas the German takes a lot of time to decide, but when they make a decision, the execution is relatively quick. And what may happen if you have an American boss takes a quick decision, environment changes, change his mind, frustrates the hell out of the Germans. So here, the team needs to make a call as a team, and then when they decide that this is our position and what can I do, they hold each other peer accountable. You cannot impose it as a boss and control. They have to be a team decision, and I'm sure they will hold each other peer accountable, and the chance of living that culture is much bigger. And the last one is conflict scale, confrontational versus non-confrontational. That was their position, particularly for the Asians, which tend to take things personal. If you conflict and confront their point of view, they may take it personal. That was a big reflection. Now, 18 months down the road, they finished the deal with Alibaba, transferred the volume. They just have 0.1% profitability, which was 80 million profit. Now, virtual power teams formula. It is P plus V plus I divided by S. And P stands for personality. You can work with the best in the world, provided you can unite them in a strong team. But we know from sports that the all-star teams seldomly win. So V is for vision, to define the nucleus together. So everyone goes towards one goal, the nucleus. I is tricky, is not innovation, it is intimacy. So you need to have a moments like the lifeline, the magic question. You go deep, heart to heart to create this connection despite the distance. And S, which is the less the better, divided by S, is self or ego. We know in the corporate environment, sometimes the manager has some hidden agenda, that facilitates their career or their bonus scheme. But if you set the goal as a team, and if you have a lot of praise and recognition, you don't have to develop your hidden agenda. So in this way, we tackle the I and strengthen the we and the team. Winning spirit. 2006, 2007, I was leading a project, and that was a global program for establishing global shared services outsourcing to Asia. And I was responsible for the European rollout. So initially, I had 3 people on the team. We had to transfer 20 countries in Europe from local IT management to the global shared services. 2 people on the team, Lena, German lady speaking 5 languages, top organized, the perfect PMO. And then an Uzbek guy called Jamshid. He was like larger than life individual. And we were supported by 5 global experts, HR, legal, and tax. Initially was the big enthusiasm, first business trip to Kuala Lumpur, the project on the global radar of the global leadership team. But after the first 3 months, I've noticed that sometimes I'm trying to be the smartest person in the room, not just to say what is to be done, but how exactly is to be done. And after such meeting, it was very difficult neither to motivate nor to push the people from the distance. I said to myself, what are you doing here? Instead of being a productivity factor, I become a break factor and the burnout is waiting behind the corner. It has to be done in a different way. And while I was contemplating, Jamshid left the team. He organized the career move for himself. And instead of him came Pilar, a Spanish lady with a red mane and a bit of a harsh voice. And she brought the fresh wind of change. She was the one to introduce the lifeline. So my team members, we were 5 by then, Eric and Mark joined. I was amazed at so far I was enough to compete with the people, and now all of a sudden I saw how grateful and how privileged I am to work with so much talent. So we had the lifelines, we set the goal bottom up, not as streamlined as now, but not missing. And 6 months down the road, we gathered so much momentum. So I said to the leadership team, I went to the project board and said, if we finish this 2 years project 3 months early, I suggest that all 30 people involved in the project go to Tenerife, Canary Islands. And they agreed. Why? The people cost of the project was 1 million per annum. If we finish 3 months early, we released 250,000, and with 50 of them, we go to Tenerife. Then I came with, I immediately announced this to the team, and the spirit changed just in a second. Particularly people from Uzbekistan and Belarus were particularly happy. Now, Lena came with creative reporting. So far, we had the typical traffic light report. Now it was an island with a palm tree. And we had 20 parachuters for each of the market, which milestone after milestone were approaching that. Initially was the competition who will land first on the island. But after the first free landing, it was irrelevant. Only if we all make it, then we all go to the otherwise nobody goes. So day after day, the suspense has risen. You can see at a glance who needs help, who can help. So it created a wonderful spirit of cooperation. And just 1 day before the deadline, on the 30th of December 2007, the last parachuter from Uzbekistan landed on the island. So we had a top customer feedback. We had saved 200,000 net to 50 gross, and we had a fantastic party. What is the moral of this? If you set a price, be generous. Just the average price will not move your people. Announce it early enough. Second, in a virtual team, they need more time to identify how cool it would be to celebrate. And third, have visual reporting. You know, with a visual reporting, you can see who needs help, and it helps to build a team spirit. Victor, do we have questions?
Actually, I do have one question for you.
Okay, let me just wrap it up.
Sure.
1 minute. So, how to build your virtual power teams? You could have a keynote online or live, 1-2 hours to go through the method. You could have a tailored workshop, like 2 days, as I mentioned, or we could break it down in blocks of 2 hours online. Or you could do an online masterclass. This is a special offer for you guys. I'm starting on the 17th of November, open masterclass, and you can become a certified virtual power teams master. Just if you're interested, and I give you a 10% discount for the participants, just email me on the email below here. Now, and also for the book. If you want to get a book, send me an email. You get a discount, and you get my signature and a personal dedication, as Victor mentioned. Now, for the question, before we go into the question, we started with a space journey. Let's go to the universe just for 1 minute, even less. Do you know that in the universe only 10% is material? 10% are planets and stars. 20% is like nothing, like black holes or phenomena that scientists still cannot explain. And 70% is invisible energy, like the gravity that holds the universe together. In a virtual team, it's quite similar. 10% are the team members and the infrastructure. 20% are undeveloped potentials, and 70%, the biggest part, are the relationships, the trust, the gravity that holds your team together. So the art to lead virtual teams is to focus on the 70%. And I assure you will be amazed by the wonderful fruits to come. So let me conclude with one sentence that has guided me through the years. And it goes like this. If you dream alone, this is just a dream. If we people dream together, this is the beginning of a new reality. Thank you.
That's a great summary. Actually, Peter, this is also the sentence which you wrote in the book which I received from you. It actually was when we dream and work together, we create a new reality. So I can hear that this is a quote which you are all the time sharing with your audience, and this is absolutely a perfect sentence. Peter, you were a presenter, I was a note taker, now I need to be a gatekeeper, but I have one question for you, and if you could answer it shortly. What would you advise to managers to limit social separation in their teams in the times of remote work environment?
Excellent. So first of all, make these personal introductions. Use the 4 questions. You will build further. Even if you work 10 years together in one office, you will discover new things, and that will put you on a new note and will enable people to socially connect. And second, that's part of my recognition, Big Rock. There are many ways to gamify it. So let the people choose. I have a list of things, choose the theme of the week. For example, what is the perfect office environment? And they work from home, but people could share, their office space and make it cool with pets and so on. Sometimes they go out because if you don't have a full lockdown, you could work on the mountaintop and so on if you have internet. So let them choose a theme, let them share, give them the opportunity to comment and like in a Facebook style, if you have MS Teams or other systems where you could provide immediate feedback. And this will trigger not social distancing, but engaging. And don't try to figure it out yourself. Debate with the team, let them brainstorm, as I said, with a whiteboard. People can contribute, maybe write a blog, collect the ideas, make a decision. We will do this thing this week, next thing the other. The new product you could have on a monthly basis, product of the month, and so on. You could celebrate many of the things that happen anyway, and people work more in Corona, but just do it in a structured way so people can shape it. They could give immediate feedback. They could feel proud if they're the one, that wins something, can gamify it. Again, this is unlimited. Just take it consciously. Let the people get their energy and brain and juices, and you will be amazed.
Thank you very much for those advices, and thank you very much for being with us. Just to sum it up, I will also encourage people not only to take interest in this, what you shared today and what you presented, but also to your new initiative, which is your podcast. I am a big fan of podcasts, and Peter is also an author of a new podcast about powering virtual teams. You can find him on every podcast platform. Peter, it was a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you very much.
It was an honor, and all the best, guys, in building your power teams.
Thank you. Szanowni Państwo, bardzo serdecznie dziękujemy za ten dzień, który spędziliśmy razem. Ten dzień pełen trendów, dyskusji, ale też i myślę, że innych emocji niż to, co przynoszą nam takie wydarzenia, które realizowane są przez nas w normalnym świecie. Poruszyliśmy dzisiaj tematykę inwestycji, poruszyliśmy dzisiaj tematykę przychodzenia do Polski nowych projektów GBS-owych. Porozmawialiśmy sobie o środowisku biurowym i porozmawialiśmy sobie o podejściu do pracy w modelu rozproszonym. Czas na podsumowanie dzisiejszego spotkania. Jest z nami Edyta Wiwatowska. Edyto, proszę o Twoje słowo podsumowania.
Dziękuję bardzo. Szanowni Państwo, myślę, że kończąc naszą konferencję wypada podziękować. W pierwszym rzędzie chciałabym podziękować ProProgresio za wspaniały pomysł na to wydarzenie. Dziękuję także wszystkim panelistom, speakerom za wkład merytoryczny, a także wszystkim uczestnikom, którzy poświęcili swój czas. Mam nadzieję, że dla Państwa to wydarzenie było równie interesujące jak dla nas. Kończąc w imieniu miasta Bydgoszczy i Bydgoskiej Agencji Rozwoju Regionalnego, pragnę życzyć Państwu samych sukcesów w dalszym rozwoju Państwa biznesu i oczywiście zapraszam do Bydgoszczy.
Edyto, bardzo serdecznie dziękujemy za to, że miasto Bydgoszcz i Bydgoska Agencja Rozwoju Regionalnego tak mocno stawia na rozwój sektora GBS. To dzięki Wam też to wydarzenie mogło się fizycznie albo raczej wirtualnie odbyć. Jest ono częścią BSS Tour, które od 3 lat przechodzi przez Polskę i jego głównym celem jest dzielenie się jak najlepszą wiedzą i komentarzem związanym z usługami dla biznesu. Państwu dziękuję serdecznie, ale także słowa podziękowania powinny pójść w kierunku naszych partnerów, bo to dzięki nim mogliśmy dostarczyć Wam właśnie takie wydarzenie, na które myślę, że branża dosyć długo czekała. Także serdecznie dziękuję miastu Bydgoszczy oraz Bydgoskiej Agencji Rozwoju Regionalnego za objęcie patronatem specjalnym i bycie partnerem specjalnym tego wydarzenia, ale także firmie Art Kombinat, bo to dzięki nim te wszystkie magiczne, techniczne cuda mogliśmy dzisiaj tutaj wykombinować. Dziękuję serdecznie Talent Alpha, Location Perspective, Ask Henry, Multicowork oraz Riposta za to, że dostarczyły nam różne elementy, które złożyły się na całość tego wydarzenia dzisiaj. No i nie byłoby nas w międzynarodowej społeczności, gdyby nie partnerzy, jakimi są Deutsche Outsourcing Verband, IAOP czy też Global Sourcing Association. A to wszystko nagłaśniają dla nas media Outsourcing Journal, Outsourcing and More oraz 10 lat, które dzisiaj przypada na Outsourcing Portal. Dziękuję Państwu za obecność na dzisiejszym wydarzeniu i spotkajmy się już może nie tylko w wirtualnym, ale także i w normalnym świecie. Do zobaczenia.